everyone! Thanks again for joining me for another UCI Alumni Association cooking demo. Today will actually be a baking demo and we will be making peppermint macaroons for the holiday spirit. So first things first, what I like to go over with you is a list of ingredients. So you're going to need powdered sugar, almond flour, eggs for egg whites, a little bit of cream of tartar or other acids such as like lemon juice, water, and sugar. These are going to be your ingredients for the macaron cookies themselves. So the macaron, as people know them, is actually two components. They are almond-based cookie shells, and it's a little cookie sandwich with usually buttercream or other kinds of fillings in the middle. So those are your ingredients for the cookie shell portion. And for our buttercream, today we'll be making a very basic American buttercream. Simple, easy, forgiving, and very easy to flavor and color as well. So for that you will need unsalted butter, powdered sugar, vanilla extract or peppermint extract, or whatever other kinds of flavorings you'd like to use. So quick note about some of the ingredients. For today's lecture, demo, presentation, I just want to give you as many baking tips as possible that you can use in a lot of other of your baking recipes, not just for today's recipe. So for the buttercream, it's important to use unsalted butter as opposed to salted butter for a lot of your recipes because this gives you the power and control to season your ingredients the way that you want them to come out. If you use salted butter, that's butter that already has salt in it, so it's kind of predetermined for you. But if you use unsalted butter, then you can adjust flavorings to your own preference. Okay, so a couple things about the equipment we'll be using today too. I have with me a food processor, various bowls, spatulas. I also have a candy thermometer, so this is going to be important when we actually make our Italian meringue for the macaroons themselves. I also have a standing mixer with a whisk attachment. This is going to be important for whisking our egg whites when we make the macaron shells. Standing mixer isn't, Standing mixer isn't necessarily crucial. You can also use a hand mixer if you want, or you can whisk by hand, but a standing mixer makes your life a little bit easier in the sense that while this is going, we can be doing other things as well. Something else that's kind of important, of course, is our oven. So for baking, it's very important to make sure that your oven is calibrated. So my oven is actually pretty new, so it is calibrated, but if you're not sure if your oven is giving you correct temperatures, I really recommend that you purchase a small oven thermometer and just place it in there, because if your temperatures are wrong in your oven, it's going to drastically affect the outcomes of your baking. So I strongly encourage you to make sure that your oven is calibrated. Also, for baking, there is an option, if you have this option in your oven, to have convection or regular. So the convection oven setting will circulate the air inside of your oven, which will give you an overall more even temperature inside the oven, which I think for this particular recipe is important and kind of crucial to have the outcome be more consistent. If you don't have a convection oven, don't worry, just keep an eye on it and hopefully things will turn out fine. Okay, so anyways, let's go ahead and let's get started. So first things first, I'm going to grind in my food processor 150 grams of powdered sugar and 150 grams of almond flour. Now my reason for doing this is because since these are dry ingredients in this recipe, I want them to be as fine as possible. So a lot of people see macaroons as being one of the more difficult things that you can bake. It's not so much difficult as it is just very finicky. So you have to be very particular about your measurements and also the consistency of your ingredients as you're working with them. So like anything else in life, all it takes is practice, practice, practice. It's okay if things don't turn out right your first try. You learn from your mistakes, or you learn from what didn't work out for you, and then the next time you go to bake something, it'll be easier. So that's one of the things about baking that some people can find a little frustrating, is that it's harder to fix your mistakes on the fly as it is with cooking. Cooking's a little bit more forgiving in that way, but if you practice with your baking, then your outcomes will be better. All it takes is more practice. Trust me, I've messed up many things before I was able to get things to be right. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to measure my ingredients out on a scale. So when it comes to cooking, or sorry, when it comes to baking, it's a good idea to try to get weight measurements on as many of the ingredients as possible. This is important because the weight measurements will give you more accurate, consistent results than just a cup of this or a cup of that. So for recipes that when you're trying to look up a recipe to use for baking, you want to try to look for recipes that have weight measurements in them. It's going to be more accurate and more consistent. Okay. So anyways, food processor, I have my scale. I'm going to place this on here, tear it out, and I'll measure out 150 grams of powdered sugar. Another word for this if you're looking at some recipes is also 10x. That's just powdered sugar, which is essentially sugar mixed with cornstarch. Okay, so I got 150 grams there. Beautiful. And also 150 grams of almond flour. So I'm going to process these and grind these together so that the shells will have a smooth top. They won't be grainy or bumpy. So the important thing here also is we want it to be pretty fine, but at the same time we don't want to grind it too far because the almond flour will actually start to release some oil if we process it too much. So we don't want that because we don't want a lot of extra moisture per se. We just want it to be fine. So I got my food processor. So a good idea when you're blending something or grinding something down is you want to scrape the sides, scrape the bottom, make sure that everything is getting processed evenly. Same for if you're mixing something, etc. Okay, so feeling it with my fingers, I can still feel some large grains for the almond flour, so I'm going to go ahead and continue processing just a little bit further. Check this out. Okay, great. So this is starting to have the consistency more of, or closer to regular flour, but there is no moisture on the bottom, so we are good there. All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to empty this out into a large mixing bowl, okay? So because we measured everything very accurately, we want to get everything out of the mixer here, or out of the food processor. When you're baking, sometimes a spatula is kind of like your best friend. You can really get every single last granule out of whatever vessel. I remember my first chef instructor, the first time we baked something together, I just casually dumped whatever it was into a bowl. And she asked me, aren't you going to get all this other stuff from the sides? I said, oh, I didn't realize that. And she said, when you have your own bakery, that can be a whole other portion. That can be a whole other cookie. If you're selling cookies for $4 each, that's an extra $4 of profit you're missing out every time you bake a batch. So I think about that every time I scrape out a bowl, and that's something I encourage you to do to reduce your food waste and really get the most out of everything that you're making. Okay. Alright, so now here I have my powdered sugar and almond flour mixture. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to separate some egg whites, and using these egg whites I'm going to put them into the almond flour and powdered sugar mixture and make a paste. Okay, so something really quick about your ingredients that you're using. It's important that are room temperature. Usually when you're baking for butter, it makes the incorporation of butter a lot easier if your butter is room temperature. For eggs, it's actually easier to separate them when they're cold, but it is easier for them to get whipped if they are room temperature. Okay, so something about whipping egg whites for meringues is that your egg whites have to be extremely clean. Also, the bowl and whisk that you're using have to be extremely clean as well. Okay, by clean I mean that there's no traces of egg yolk whatsoever. So if you happen to be cracking your eggs and one of the yolks cracks, for instance, that egg white is no longer usable for your meringue. It'll increase your chances of it kind of not working out for you. Okay. So another thing that I also recommend is when you crack eggs, to crack them on your countertop as opposed to on the edge of your bowl. This prevents egg shells from getting into the egg that you're cracking. Okay? So another thing I also recommend when you're cracking eggs is to have a separate bowl for cracking the egg into. The reason for this is if we're going to just be using clean egg whites, and say I'm on my 5th egg and everything is going well, and that 6th egg the yolk cracks, then all my egg whites are ruined. So instead of doing that, I'm going to crack them each into a separate bowl. Then I'm going to separate them out, like so. I'll save my yolk for later, for another recipe, and then I will take my clean egg white and put it into the bowl that I will be using. Okay? So go through a couple of these here. So we need 55 grams of egg whites for the paste and 55 grams of egg whites for our meringue. Meringue is essentially whipped egg whites and sugar. There are different variations of meringues where you can either just incorporate the sugar raw, or you can cook the sugar with the egg whites, or you can cook the sugar with water and then add that to the egg whites. Basically what happens when you whip egg whites is the proteins inside the egg whites are very stretchy, and when you whip them, they stretch out further and further. And that's how we're able to get a meringue out of your egg whites. Okay? Okay, I'm going to stop there. See how we're doing there. And if you are weighing out your egg whites and sometimes they like to glomp together, I don't know a better word for that, you can kind of use a fork or something just to break them up a little bit easier, so that way you can measure them more accurately. Okay, so taking my scale, I'm going to tear that out again. I'm going to measure out 55 grams right now for powdered sugar and almond flour mixture to make the paste. And then I'm going to measure out another 55 grams to use later for our meringue. 59. See if I can get that a little bit closer. Oh. Okay. Okay. It seems a little annoying, but it is worth it for it to be more accurate. Oh my goodness. Okay, great. So, I'm going to take this 55, add it to here, my almond flour and powdered sugar. And with my spatula, I'm just going to make a paste out of this. So this will be very, very sticky and like tacky. It's going to have the consistency of kind of cement, and that's what we want, at least for right now. Okay, so all I'm doing in the bowl is I'm making sure that all of it is incorporated together. this is your first time making macaroons, again, don't be afraid or intimidated. It's actually a fairly straightforward recipe, and each time you do it, you're going to get better and better. Also, something about this recipe that is kind of neat is that depending on, of course, the almond flour and other ingredients that you're using, this recipe is naturally gluten-free for anyone that is celiac out there. Again, just make sure that you're checking where all your ingredients were processed, but there is no flour in this recipe. It's just almond flour, which is ground almonds. Alright, so here is what we're looking at. As you can see, it's very tacky, like cement. Very pasty. And we are just going to set that off to the side. Okay? Alright, now what we're going to do is I'm going to measure out the other 55 grams of egg whites. Hopefully. Alright. Oh. Another solution to this is you can also buy the liquid egg whites at the store as well. But I like to save my yolks for when I make like custards and other things like that. Okay. Great, so here's my 55 egg whites, or 55 grams of egg whites, sorry. And what I'm going to do with that is I'm going to put that into my standing mixer bowl. So again, because our egg whites are very clean, we also want to make sure that our bowl is very clean as well. So I'm just going to give this a quick wipe. We don't want any moisture, or any water, or any whatever might be lingering in here or on my whisk. So I'm just going to give that a quick wipe, and then I'm going to add in my egg whites. Okay. Alright. What I'm also going to add in is just a little bit of cream of tartar, or if you don't have this lying around, you can also use a little bit of lemon juice or some kind of acid. And this just helps the egg whites with their stability. It makes them a little bit more stable when they whip. Alright. Great. So, put that here, attach my whisk. And before I set this running, because it's going to make some noise, I'm also going to measure out my sugar and water that we will be cooking on the stove. Okay? So, I want 33 grams of water. A little bit over. Good. And then I want 150 grams of regular sugar. So I keep my sugar here in this whipped butter container because containers are good. I like having containers. Add in my sugar. I recommend saving your containers because they make for useful storage for other things. Okay, so I want 150 grams. Perfect. And we're going to just whisk this together lightly, just so it comes together a little bit before we put it on the stove top. Okay. Alright, great. So now, so it's just a little bit moistened, so that way I know all my sugar and water are mixed together. This is where your candy thermometer is going to come into play. So we are going to boil this until it turns into a syrup, until it reaches 118 degrees Celsius. Okay. There you go. I'm just going to put this banana here on the stove. Keep an eye on this. So while this is going, we are going to be whisking our egg whites. Put this off to the side. Okay. Awesome. There we go. Okay. So now we will start whisking our egg whites, and we want to whisk them until they are soft peaks. Okay, so today we'll be going through what exactly soft, medium, or hard peaks really looks like, or what that means. But for right now, we just want soft peaks. So this is when they just start being a little bubbly, but starting to have some form. So something else I forgot to mention, you'll notice that in your saucepan, there will be some granules of sugar that are stuck to the sides. What you can do to get those into your syrup is take a pastry brush and some water and just brush around the sides. This will prevent it from burning, and it'll also make sure that everything is inside. Alright, so once your sugar water reaches 118 degrees Celsius, I'm going to slowly drizzle that into my egg whites. Careful not to burn yourself. Great. So once that's all in there, I'm going to kick the mixer back up to a high speed. We're going to whip this into firm peaks. Kicking on my almond flour paste. So good, not too dry. What I'm also going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and turn on my oven. We're going to set it to 300 degrees Fahrenheit. And again, if you have a convection oven, or convection fan, then you're going to turn on that as well. You want your rack inside to be set in the middle, not too low or too high. Let that start to preheat. So, something that I've noticed with this particular recipe is I've actually decided to opt for just one piping bag instead, so I can pipe it all out at once, because sometimes the egg whites can actually deflate in between refilling bags. We're going to check in our egg whites really quick. Pretty good. Want it to be a little bit firmer, then we keep going. Okay, let's check out our egg whites one more time. Now this should be ready. Good, that's what we're looking for. So they're standing up on their own, shiny, glossy, not drooping. Perfect. So now we're going to incorporate our meringue into our almond flour paste. Also, a trick about working with anything where you're cooking sugar is once you're done with the dish, to put it in water immediately. It'll make your life easier for cleanup. So I'm going to start folding the meringue into the almond paste. We really try to want to use more of a folding technique as opposed to like a smashing down, because we don't want to deflate our egg whites too much. So I just add a little bit in the beginning to get it going. looks good. So now I'm going to add the rest of it in. So if you notice, I can turn the bowl upside down. Nothing happens. So we know that the meringue is at a good point. So again, really make sure you get into your bowl. Try to get all of it out. We want to be as precise as we can. Alright, so again, the technique that I'm using is a folding technique. And let me just show you what I mean by that really quick. What I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be cutting down into my mixture, folding up and over, okay? And I'll also be turning the bowl at the same time. So cut, lift, turn, cut, lift, turn, cut, lift, turn. What this is going to do is it's going to make sure that everything is incorporated very nicely and evenly without deflating things too much, okay? So right now, the consistency is very cement-like, so I'm going to do this until the batter runs down in ribbons or until you can draw a figure 8 with the batter. I'll show you what I mean when we get to that point. Great, so if you notice, when it comes down, it falls down in ribbons. So that's closer to what we were looking for. Alright, awesome. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add in our food dye. So what I like to do for today is I kind of want to get like a marbling effect on the macaron shell. So I'm going to put in a couple drops of food coloring. And I'm going to lightly mix it together, but I want there to be a nice swirl. Just like that. Okay, so now that I have my food dye in, I'm going to scoop this into my piping bag, just like so. The less you mix, the better your marbling will be. The last bit in here. Alright. So now what we're going to do is we're going to pipe these out. The trick to this is you want to use both hands, one to control the tip and one to squeeze out the batter. If you notice on my mat there is a smaller circle and a larger circle. So I'm going to pipe until it fills out the smaller circle, so when the batter finishes settling out, then it'll be the circumference of the larger circle. So what I'm doing is I'm piping straight down and releasing a little bit and flicking my wrist to give a nice clean cutoff. And I'm only piping to the circumference of the smaller circle because once the batter finishes settling, it's going to settle out towards the larger circle. Straight down, release, flick. Straight down, release, flick. Okay? Okay, so once you are done piping out, what you're going to do is you're going to tap your sheet pan against the counter or with your hand. I like personally to tap it down like this. What this does is it pops and releases any air bubbles that might be inside your macaron shells. And it also helps them settle out a little bit more as well. we will let these rest. So letting your macaroon shells dry out like this is going to ensure that they have that little foot along the bottom. Basically, we want these to sit out until they are dry to the touch. So instead of sticky tacky, they will be able to touch. So we'll just leave these right now to dry. In the meantime, what we are going to do is we are going to make our buttercream, our peppermint buttercream. Okay? So excuse me while I do some dishes really quick. Again, this is one of those things that's easier to do in a standing mixer. You can also use a hand mixer if you don't have a standing mixer. So a lot of people think that standing mixers are quite expensive, but you can actually find them for pretty reasonable prices pre-owned. For instance, I found mine off of OfferUp, or you can also look at sites like Craigslist or eBay. I found mine for under $100, and it came with all the attachments and everything works, so I'm perfectly happy with it. For anyone that enjoys baking or has a passion for baking, I strongly encourage you to purchase one of these. They'll change your life. Something really quick about oven temperatures, just so you can get a general idea, is say for instance if you want to try making your own recipe, or if you want to make adjustments to your recipe. A standard oven temperature is 350 degrees. This is usually the temperature that you'll see things like cookies get baked at, cookies and brownies, things like that. A higher oven temperature is going to be closer to 400 or 425, 450 degrees Fahrenheit. That's going to be for pies or tarts or other things where you need like a stronger burst of heat. So if you notice, our oven temperature is 300, which is pretty low. So we want this because it's going to be that gentler heat that will cook the macaroons without burning them. Another thing about when our shells end up going into the oven is that we are going to put them in just one sheet tray at a time. So I have 2 sheet trays piped out, plus a little more because that's how much the recipe will end up making. But you want to just bake them off one at a time. The reason for this is because even if you have the fan in your oven going, there's still going to be some of the heat blocked from the 2 pans being on top of each other. So to have more consistent results, it's better just to bake off one sheet at a time. It is a little bit more time consuming, but it's going to give you better results that way. Okay, so for buttercream, I'm going to use my paddle attachment, and here I have 1 cup of unsalted butter. Again, unsalted, so that way I can control the flavor. And it is softened to room temperature. Okay. So all I'm going to do right now is with my paddle attachment and my standing mixer, I'm just going to beat this until it is fluffy. What I'm going to be doing is I will start sifting my powdered sugar. So the reason for this, why we sift, is because it will give us less lumps in our buttercream. Let's check on my butter now that I have all the powdered sugar sifted. So what we're looking for is just a really light, fluffy kind of consistency. So it looks great. So now what we're going to do, we're going to add in our powdered sugar. Do this in stages, so I'm going to start off with a little bit now. And this can get a little messy, so I recommend turning your mixer down to a slower speed and then adding it slowly. So again, I have sifted 3 cups of powdered sugar, but I think maybe 2.5 or 2 3/4 is a little bit better, at least for me, taste-wise. Not too overpoweringly sweet, but still enough powdered sugar to give it texture, or structure rather. So if your American buttercream is ever too firm to work with, what you can always do is add a little bit of heavy whipping cream to thin it out. Okay, so right now our consistency is like this, to the point where it doesn't collapse, but maybe a little thick. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add in just a little bit of heavy whipping cream. Just to help it along a little bit. Alright, so look at it now. Beautiful. So it still holds up on its own, but to the touch it is a little bit easier to work with. Perfect. So now what I'm going to do is, just depending on how I want it to taste, I'm going to flavor it. So I have with me some peppermint extract. This is different than spearmint extract, so just make sure that you're paying attention to which one is which. Usually the regular like mint extracts are going to be used in more like savory recipes, whereas the peppermint extracts is going to be used for more desserts or sweet recipes. So I'm going to add in, let's start with maybe half a teaspoon, and then we'll taste that. Minty, but I think I want a little bit more. Alright. And it's gonna be a little strong, so it's always better to add less, and then if you need to, add more, as opposed to adding too much and then there's nothing you can do to take it out. Try this again. Minty, that's good. That's definitely to be. Okay, great. So for now, we're going to set this aside until we need it. I'm trying to get all of this off of my spatula here, my mixer spatula. Paddle, rather. Okay. What we can also do now is we can put it into our piping bag so that it's ready to go for when we assemble. Okay, great. So let's go ahead and check on our shells and see how they're doing. So these have been drying for about 15 or 20 minutes now. And don't worry about them getting too dry. They can last for at least an hour or so. So as you can see, when I go to touch these, nothing sticks to my finger. So these are nice and dry. So I'm gonna go ahead and pop these in the oven. Again, 300 degrees, middle rack. And then we are going to bake these for approximately 20 minutes. Now when you're baking something, it's always a good idea to turn your pans halfway through baking because most ovens are not perfect, and so there might be hot spots in your oven, or basically your oven won't heat evenly. So if one side is hotter than the other, or the back is hotter than the front, or whatever, it's a good idea to rotate your pans halfway through to ensure that everything gets baked evenly. Okay? Alright. So what I've also done is I have taken some candy canes and put them through my food processor to make a nice little candy cane coating or dusting. And what we're going to do with this is once the macaroons are assembled in the cookie sandwich, we're going to dip these in the candy cane. So just give it a little bit extra pop. Alright, welcome back. So I just pulled these out of the oven about 10-15 minutes ago. As you can see, tops are flat. There is a nice foot on them as well. So again, this comes from letting them dry out and developing that skin first, so that way when they cook, or when they bake rather, when they come up, then they have this nice foot around, okay? So after they cool off a little bit from being in the oven, you'll be able to peel them off the mat. They should have a nice bottom on them, like that, okay? Nice and flat. So I'm just going to unmold these really quick. And now what we're going to do with our peppermint buttercream is we're going to try to match up the shells that are about the same size. So theoretically they should all be the same size, but you know, nothing's perfect. So we try to match up the shells that look like they go together, like so. They're nice and consistent. Okay. And what we'll do is we will pipe out a little bit of the buttercream, just like so. Match it up. Make your little cookie sandwich, just like that. And now with my crushed candy canes, I'm gonna go ahead and give this a dip. Get them all around the sides. We have our candy cane macaron. Just in time for the holidays. So again, most of the flavor comes from your filling. What I like to do with some of my fruit macaroons, like raspberry or apricot, is I will make a raspberry jam or a raspberry filling, as well as flavor my buttercream with some raspberry as well. And what I will do for those ones where I fill them with something is I will pipe a small ring of buttercream, just like that, and I will put a small scoop of filling in the middle. And again, you can flavor your macaroons with whatever you like. Some of my personal favorites are chocolate, mocha, vanilla is always a good standby. Matcha is very popular. I've also done some taro macaroons. Great. Mango, basically anything you can think of can be a macaroon filling. And there we have it. Candy cane peppermint macaroons. Ta-da! So again, all the information you need for this demo, this tutorial, will be in the description below. Let me know if you have any questions about anything. I'm always happy to answer any questions you might have about baking or about ordering or anything like that. So feel free to reach out to me anytime. I hope you enjoyed this, and thank you for watching.